married, 2 kids, everything's good. You're driving back from this family vacation.
I believe I may have just dozed off for a second where you just nod. But I swerved to the right. I overcorrected to the left. In doing so, with the overcorrection, I lost control of the car. It began to roll. Not off the road, but down the road, and I had the cruise control set at 75 miles per hour, so it was a high-speed crash, horrible crash. They say the car rolled no less than 6 to 8 times. You know, I blacked out for the accident, but when the car, you know, came to a stop or a still point, the first thing I heard was my 7-year-old crying in the back seat, hysterically crying, and I thought, I got to get to my boy. I've got to get to my boy. And that's when I realized I couldn't move. I mean, I was pinned. There was horrific pain. I was struggling to breathe. I didn't realize my injuries, actually. I was unaware. I mean, both of my legs had been crushed. The left leg was eventually amputated above the knee. My back had been broken in 2 places, ironically just cracking the vertebrae. It didn't damage the spinal column, thank goodness. But my right arm had nearly been torn off. There was no muscle even attached to the rotator cuff. And then the seatbelt had cut through my, you know, my abdomen and ruptured all my intestines. I had no idea. I just knew, you know, my son's crying, I got to get to my boy. But that's when the brutal reality hit that nobody else was crying, and I became acutely aware. I knew and realized then that my wife, Tamara, was gone, and that Griffin, my little boy, was gone. I knew at the scene. It's difficult to talk about that still after 26 years. You know, I remember things about it, and then there's other things I'll never forget. But that's the darkest hell, you know, I could ever be in. I mean, half the family's gone. I've got a hysterical child in the back seat. And I was driving the car. I mean, the guilt, you know, the regret, the like, can't I get those 3 seconds back? What happened? And that was the setting. I mean, that's it. Now, in that absolute horrific, darkest moment, it was interesting because light came. I literally felt light come, like suddenly I was surrounded by light that felt tangible, almost like I was being comforted, like almost like, you know, it felt as if I was rising above the accident scene. And I was a little bit confused, like, how can I be okay? Suddenly I could breathe. The pain was gone, like, you know, and I was a believer, but beliefs are different than reality. I was experiencing something profound, and suddenly in all this light, my wife, who, because she was reclined sleeping in the car, the seatbelt had not restrained her properly, and she had suffered head trauma, which is what took her life. And yet here in this light, and I was aware of that at the scene of the accident, and yet here I am in this light, and suddenly she's there with me, and she's gorgeous. There's no entry, there's no injuries, she's absolutely radiant. And yet she's emphatic that you can't stay, you gotta go back. And we literally had this conversation about if I stayed with her, Spencer, our oldest, would be orphaned. And therefore I knew he's going to be okay. And we made a choice. You know, boy, did I learn a lot about choice. You know, you talk about the 10% and the 90%. I mean, here I am looking at the woman I loved more than life. And yet I know I've got a little boy in the backseat of that car. And we made a choice that I would come back. And that was the most profound goodbye I've said.
So, I'm so sorry, first of all. And I know 26 years later, I don't even know what that's like, but I'm guessing it still hurts. So I'm really sorry. One thing that gives me comfort is when my wife passed away, I was actually talking about this with my mother-in-law last night.
Yeah. Because
we were driving, and her name's Marcia. And I said, you know what, Marcia, one thing that comforts me is, you know, if one of us had to stay on this side and one of us had to go, like, I feel like I got the hard part. Like, I'll do it, Courtney. Like, give me the hard part, and you can find peace and rest, and you'll be up there with Riggins and Frankie and Race and Ryder, and I got Blue. So that kind of gives me this weird sense of comfort, like, because I want to get to the survivor's guilt with you later, but I have so much, and I wasn't even in the car, so I don't even imagine what it's like for you, but I have so much survivor's guilt. But one thing that helps me manage that is, like, hey, like, at least I'm going through the hell on Earth, and Courtney's not. So it sounds like, is that similar to what you guys had?
Yeah.
But here's my, sorry, I just have a follow-up question. Because that helps me deal with Courtney and Race. But, like, Griffin's 14 months old.
Yeah.
My son, almost 6.
Yeah.
And Frankie just turned 2. It's different for them. Like, because with Courtney, it's like, okay, I'll stay here and do it. But with my kids, it's like, I'd love to switch them places. I'd love it for Frankie to have a life. And so how's that? How do you manage that with Griffin? Because I think it's different with Tamara, but with Griffin, how do you handle that pain?
Oh, there was so much grief. I don't know. I haven't experienced a deeper pain than having a child pass, especially a little one. And little, I mean, 12's little, right?
Yeah.
10's little, 6 is little, 2 is little, 14 months is little. And he was, his car seat came apart, and he was ejected from the car. And I knew that, so I couldn't see him. I knew.
You knew that, like, on this, like, when you were going through.
On the scene. And I'm like, I mean, my whole soul just cried out, where's my little boy? And that's how I knew he's gone. Now, oh, you know, the why, yeah, like, why not me? Why can't he live a life? And I had an interesting experience when I was out of the body, so to speak. I got to hold on to him. He was in that realm as well. And the interesting thing is, when I encountered him, he was sleeping as peacefully as when I had looked in the rearview mirror, you know. And it's so real. Here's the thing. I mean, being, and I'm saying out of the body, yeah, I mean, you know, I experienced, I'm not my body. I'm something different, far greater, far more connected. But when I was there in that realm, and he had passed, but he was there, it was so physical. Like, I mean, you've picked up a sleeping child. There's a heat and a warmth, and
you could feel him breathing.
Yes,
you could feel everything.
I swept him up. I could feel him breathing. I'm holding my little boy. I'm weeping. And I felt this presence behind me, which was so overwhelming. And I'm thinking, that's God, and I'm in so much trouble. I crashed the car. I cut his life short because I lost control of the car. Again, the guilt. I was sitting there just weeping, holding him, but it was so physical, it was so real. I even leaned over and smelled his hair. And I thought, this is him, and he's okay, and he's beautiful, and he's perfect. And then this presence is coming up, and the guilt is, wow, I wrecked the car. And I had this thought, I hope I can be forgiven. And this was like I don't know if it was a can opener or a key. But when I had that thought, suddenly I felt, and this almost felt physical too, these divine arms wrap around and hold me and my little boy. And then there was this download, just this download of peace, love, and that thought, I hope I can be forgiven. The first thing that came in is, there's nothing to forgive. Everything's in pure divine order. And I thought, how can that be? I mean, my little boy's gone. And I was driving. I mean, you know.
And this is all happening, like, in that, like, the accident just happened.
Well,
or when is this? Is this at the hospital?
This is at the hospital. I was in the hospital for almost 6 months. I had 18 surgeries trying to put me together. I was in ICU for I don't know how long. And then I would get out of ICU. I threw pulmonary emboli, blood clots that lodge in your lungs. I had horrible infections. So I mean, it sounds strange, and my doctor buddy teases me because my leg got cut off. It was like I had one foot in this realm and one foot in the other.
I was going to ask, like, you're kind of coming in and out of your body almost?
I'm in and out of my body. And the reason he teases me, he says, well, we know which foot was in the other realm because that's the one we cut off. And we can laugh about that now. But yeah, I was in and out of the body. This was more toward the end of my hospital stay. In fact, I was off of morphine and all the heavy narcotics. And yet here I am in that realm again, holding my little boy in the arms of divinity and being told there's nothing to forgive. And then I begin to see my life. You know, my parents' divorce and the insecurities that caused and all the Band-Aids I put on to hide the insecurities. You know, I mean, get the grade, make the team, get the girl, you know.
Yeah.
That I realized are just a mask. I mean, yeah, I was a football player a million years ago. Now I can barely get up the stairs. But anyway, but yeah, I think
so. It's kind of because not everyone, but people who similar situations as you, they're kind of like your life flashes before your eyes.
Yeah,
that's kind of what you had going on?
Yeah,
it sounds like.
Yeah, literally, my life flashed before my eyes, and I saw things so differently.
It's so weird how your perspective just changed. Like the pain and all this, your perspective, it just shifts. It automatically.
Shifts. Yeah, and I saw it in such a higher perspective. There was no judgment. I mean, I was looking at my life and saying, oh, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. And this divine, you know, being holding me, I call God, said, there are no mistakes. What did you learn? No mistakes? What did I learn? He said, yeah, you're there to learn. And then I said, yeah, but that was wrong, and I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway. And this was mind-boggling. What was communicated to me is, well, that's your judgment of it, not ours.
Yeah.
We love you. You're as precious as the little boy you hold. You're as that beloved and that perfect and that. And it was just like, it was like this very personal experience. But as I was experiencing that, I realized that goes out to every living soul. We are so loved. And yeah, it was a profound, mind-blowing experience, really.
Something that you said stuck out that I loved, and it's obviously easier said than to be believed, but and I obviously have just met you. I've known Mason and his wife Courtney for years, and I know Court would say the same thing that you just said, where there's like, I know Mason feels guilt for not being in the car, for being the survivor, the way you felt, but when you said that there's nothing to forgive, like I know Court would say that exact same thing, and you had that feeling, there's nothing to forgive. And I think that is such a unique revelation that you were to get, because it's your mind, you just sit and play over and over. And I can't imagine what either of you have had to deal with, and the thoughts that go into your mind after experiencing something like this. But I love that you've come out of it with the knowledge that there's nothing to forgive. It's it happened. It was an accident, and you don't need to be forgiven for it. I don't know. To me, that stuck out as just a very profound, just a really neat experience to know, and to know that you didn't do it on purpose. You didn't. There's nothing you could have done. You didn't need to be forgiven.
I bet the hardest thing was just forgiving yourself. Like, I have a tough time forgiving myself. Mm-hmm. Like, you stayed and coached at a basketball tournament. Like, that's why I wasn't in the car. Family. Like, I think that's one of the hardest parts is, and I think it's just connected to a really terrible situation. It's just connected to the people I love most are now gone, and it's just hard to, like, I can't do it yet. I can't forgive myself yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it took years, by the way, and the interest. I mean, had I not had this experience, I'd probably be that guy strung out on the corner down there on something, wondering what happened. What happened. I mean, it was a gift for me to have this different perspective, but it still took years. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't want anybody to think, well, I had this bad accident, and then I had this profound experience, and I was fine.
You're just, I'm good.
Right.
No,
right.
no. I grieved miserably. For years, I still cry. I mean, it still hits in waves some days,